Previously on Real Men, Real Talk, Live.
I had to stop. I had to really check in and really go within to really find that truth. Just slow down right now. Take the time and pause in your life. Have a look around, take in your reality, take in the relationships that you're currently in. Have a look at your career. Take a good look in the mirror and ask yourself, who is that person? Is that the person that I've always truly wanted to be? Is it the person that I've always wanted to truly see? You know, I can truly say in my life right now, not only am I owning my truth, I'm actually living it. Not only am I owning my truth, I'm actually living it. To be able to live our own truth, my brothers and sisters, please dive into those values. There is nothing worse than living by someone else's values. I want you to stand true to your values. Otherwise, you'll fall on someone neglecting their own.
My name is Jay Rothman. I'm the host of the show. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk, Live. Welcome back to the studio. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. This evening, I am excited to introduce our co-host coming in from around the globe. We have Evis Love, the man in the land from down under. He's known as the Aboriginal. Welcome back, Evis Love.
Always a pleasure, brothers. Looking forward to diving in deep.
No doubt. We have also coming in from my neighbor, Sedona, Arizona, Kaimalu, coming in from, Sedona. Welcome back to the studio. Welcome back to the show, Kaimalu.
Blessed to be here, brother. Thank you for having me.
And this evening, unfortunately, Avery Fletcher is off on assignment doing some daddy duty, but he'll be back next week on Real Men Real Talk Live. Tonight's episode is episode 180, and the topic was one that Evis Love selected for us in the production meeting that he had with himself this week. The topic is called Gender or Agenda Roles. Before we invite you to kick us off, light us up, get us hot on tonight's topic, I want to just dive in a little bit about what the topic's all going to be about tonight. Gender or gender roles. Roles. And we're going to dive into the complexities of how gender roles are constructed, their impact on personal and professional lives, and the benefits of a more fluid and inclusive understanding of gender. Ev, why this topic tonight? Why did it hit you so hard this week? And what do you want to take it tonight? Kick us off, get us hot, light us up.
Beautiful, brother. To be honest, I actually have no clue why it dropped, but it certainly dropped, and it's obviously something that needs to be heard within the collective. And it's funny because you stumbled on a word there at the start, and you said gender rules. So that's interesting, Mr. Rothman. But my first question is straight away from the get-go before I dive in here. Leave it on the screen, my brother. I'm going to ask you, Jay and Kai, how many genders do we have? Jay, first up.
How many genders?
How many genders do we have?
How many genders do we have? Well, at least two.
Okay, Kai?
Depends on who you ask, man. It's a
What about
fantastic question. It depends on your definition.
What's your definition?
It's my definition. How one chooses to express themselves, how one expresses their sexuality. In this case, I would say there are potentially as many genders as there are humans.
Damn, man. Very interesting and very different, two suggestive answers, isn't there? Drop it down in the comments, my brothers and sisters, if you tuned in. How many genders do we have? Because medicine.net out there says that we have at least 72 genders now as a human species. 72. Now, you could hear two different definitions of what gender was. Jay obviously spoke about sexes, not gender. But Kai actually talked about that freedom to be able to express oneself. So Wikipedia tells us that it's a social, psychological, a cultural, and behavioral aspects of someone that's bringing it in, as which goes into a gender identity. Now, you don't have to really go far, way too back far with traditional cultures on this planet. You know, many genders, as we were once, we thought we were born into a tribe. We thought that was just only a man and a woman that was within a tribe. And this really gave us responsibilities to do within that tribe, to obviously abide to our law, LORE law, but also how we identify ourselves within the world. Fast forward it to our present moment and day. I've started to hear this gender conversation come up quite fluently, and it's occurring a lot within a lot of the schools that I'm going into. A lot of our youngins actually starting to talk about they're identifying certain things that probably blow your mind, my brothers and sisters. The thing is what I'm trying to get at here, is there an agenda behind what's going on, behind all of this gender, sexes? What is going on behind all of these scenes? My question is to ask yourself that for yourself tonight. Because as we dive in tonight, and first, I guess we really talk about what a gender is. We talk about those difference of the sexes. We're going to talk obviously a little bit about possible sexism that still happens within our culture and our society. But how can we move forward into a much more fluidity way of living within our culture and within our society? So that's going to be my basic intro to start off tonight, brothers. I'm very interested to hear what you've got to say, Kai, because when you defined your expression of that gender, I want to hear a little bit more about what you're talking about, my brother.
Yeah. Well, that's actually something that shifted a lot for me in my lifetime. Growing up, I always assumed gender and sex were interchangeable. And it was while I was in high school that shift I saw taking place, and that conversation being had more and more in society. I think from my perspective, it started as people who maybe, because we both harbor a masculine and a feminine energy. And so people who maybe are born into the male body, but are more in tune or feel more aligned with that feminine and want to express it more, then it came this idea of transgender, being a woman in a man's body, per se. I think a lot of this just really stems from these ideas about what it means to express your gender as the sex that you are. So if you're born a male, you like sports, you like the color blue, all this kind of stuff. And then people who are born male don't identify with those things, identify with what traditionally is given to us as female, are then like, well, then who am I? And so that's where I think it started. And then I think as that barrier got thinner, there became more means of expression, more ideas about how one can play with this concept of gender. It became much less fixed. And now, yeah, like you say, I think you said 72 or 74, it seems to keep going up every time I check. And that's why I expressed, I think everybody's self-expression is unique and different. So the more people then put a label to that kind of form of expression, the more genders we're going to have.
Beautiful, brother.
Yeah.
Mr. J the Rothman.
Yes, sir.
You come from the old school, and I mean that respectfully, my brother. What's your view? What's your viewpoint in how you observe what we're talking about here tonight? Because you think even in my time as well, going through school, gender was just two sexes. But as you can hear our brother Kai express, there's a totally different expression of what that word means now. What does it mean to you?
Wow. It's how much time do we have tonight?
Yeah, exactly, man.
Before I go there, I just want to take a moment here to welcome back all of our viewers. Charles Maddox, one of the founding brothers of Real Men Real Talk Live, has joined us this evening. He's with us this evening. He's in the background, but boy, he's here. I feel your energy, Charles, and I'm excited to have you join us for a new episode in season 4. Abigail, welcome back this evening, as well as Mary Kelly coming in from somewhere in Sedona, as well as Sherry Olson, who I had a beautiful, spontaneous conversation with last evening. And of course, Constance Serrano, welcome back. I guess I'm kind of stalling right now as I'm sharing some solitudes and salutations here. You know, here's my take on it. I think we live in a very confused state of being in our society today. And I think what's at the basis of it is that we have a lot of wounding, core wounding within our own body temple. And we're very confused as to who we are, how we show up. Are we enough as men? Are we enough as women? And not understanding that within each of our bodies, we have both the feminine and masculine energy within us. And it's really, how do we manage it? Are we in touch with both for balance? Or are we out of balance because we're either heavily leaning into our masculine divine energy as men, how we think we need to be showing up to be accepted, to be respected, and to be loved. And that's where I think we kind of go sideways, because until we truly understand who we are as an individual, we're trying to, as Avery talked about last week, in people pleasing, seeking approval from others to be at peace with who we are. And so I think the first step is to find your way home. When you understand and you look in a mirror and you finally like what you see, which is who you are, you then can just be your authentic self, whatever that looks like. And if there are people that don't understand you, that's okay. They don't have to understand you. The most important person to understand who you are is you. And so there's where we get, we even get into these confused states of mind where we're so busy trying to be accepted, to be part of a community, that we lose identity with who we are. And so for me, I love this topic that you picked, because what is it, our agenda or is it our agenda? And until we truly begin to like who we were born to be, we're going to pick up a lot of different agendas coming from our home, from culture, from school, from faith, from society. And so that's kind of my relationship with the role of the gender and the role of our agendas today. Because I can tell you what, I always had an agenda in my life. Always had an agenda. But today, I don't have an agenda other than just to show up as my authentic self. What do you make of that, Kai? Malu?
Yeah, powerful words there, man. I think there's something specifically you touched on that really resonated with me, which is this idea of approval from others. I've seen a lot in the gender debate, this idea of, I identify as this, you need to call me that. And it's seeking that approval and validation from the outside. And there is a level of respect that I understand for people who go by certain pronouns and want to be addressed as such. But like Jay said, not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to agree with you. And the people who don't agree with you, you don't have to give your energy towards. Find the people who do love you for who you are and do respect you for who you are in your authentic self-expression.
Beautiful, brother.
Yeah.
You know, you say, both of you say some really important things, and you're talking about that freedom to express, to really be accepted, I guess, within, you know, your group, your community. Jay, you actually mentioned something interesting, which, you know, I'll probably want to steer as well. And I think a lot of this agenda behind it that I can see, only, you know, this is coming from my opinion. I'm not here to disrespect anyone, but also from a cultural standpoint, in traditional ways on this planet, there seems to be a lot of confusion about a person's sense of belonging to a community. We always knew in our old ways, in traditional cultural law, that a young person could only take so much rejection. That's why we had, for many other reasons, kinship and totemic systems in place, because it taught, it showed you, and it gave you knowledge of how you interact not only with the people around you, but with the land. You see, the only difference that's really been, I guess, put upon us over probably the last couple of centuries is technology. It's tech. So you're starting to see a lot of confusion, particularly about these young'uns being able to identify, because they find themselves in chat rooms, they may find themselves in online group communities, that they have a sense of belonging, that they aren't being rejected. So they will identify naturally to that particular group. See, in our old ways, we were communal. We were all about continuity. The Western way is very individualistic. I'm not saying that, you know, we obviously really zoned in to a person's individual talents, gifts, and capabilities. What I am saying is that we were obviously working towards someone's talents, gifts, and capabilities that was based on how they would survive on this planet. What I've started to see is that there's been a disconnection from that. When you confuse someone, whether it's through rejection, fear, anger, all the stuff that's being thrown at us out there, you are going to be disconnected. That is why more people are connected to data than they are dirt these days.
Wow.
It's so true, man.
There's a confusion, brothers. And that's my whole point around this gender being aGENDA. We've got to open up our eyes.
Beautiful. I love that, Ev. Can you repeat that last part? People are more connected to data than dirt. Is that what you said?
That's what I said, man. That's exactly what's happened.
You know what's interesting about that? We hear the word dirt, and most of us think about something being unclean, unsanitary. But I don't think that's the dirt you're referring to. I think you're referring to the dirt that we may take our shoes off and walk in, ground, connecting to the earth, to Mother Earth. Am I correct about that?
100%, my brother.
Yeah, yeah. I want to switch gears right here, right now. I want to take us into our next segment on tonight's episode, Gender or Gender Roles. The impact of how traditional masculine roles can restrict emotional expression, hindering personal relationships. What does that mean for you tonight, Kamala?
How traditional masculine roles hinder relationships.
Emotional expression in relationships.
Emotional expression. Yeah, man. I think it goes back to this idea of what it means to be a man that started way before my time. And that's what we're challenging now, I think, as a generation in terms of redefining gender. It's redefining what it means to be a man or a woman or whatever it is that you call yourself. It's bringing new definitions to the table because we've seen in the generations prior this doesn't work. The men are emotionally unavailable. They go off and work all day and they think that's their only role, is just to be a provider for the family. But what's missing is that masculine presence, the presence of the father. And it's confused a lot of young men about what their role is in the world. Confused me for a while too. My value in terms of attracting a beloved, in terms of having a family, if that's something I want to do, is based on some kind of number in a bank account that I can show here, not here. And now I think people are much more fascinated and interested in figuring out what it is they have to offer from here. And the other stuff plays a role too. It's important. But in terms of traditional masculine roles, I actually think we're now taking back the original masculine roles and questioning this Western traditional role, because the Western traditional role isn't serving anybody. It's creating more confusion.
I'm going to ask you, Kamalu, to share a little bit more. What does that mean as far as where is the confusion coming in, and what does a healthy masculine role look like from your perspective as a man in his 20s?
Mm-hmm. So I think the confusion comes around men being able to be in touch with their emotional side, their feminine side, if you will, and thinking that if I allow myself to enter that space with somebody, I'm emasculated in some way. I lose my value. And that to be a man, I can't go there. I can't show that. And that's reinforced through TV, through movies, even like little fairy tales. Prince in shining armor comes and defeats the dragon and has this real macho experience and saves the girl. But never in any of those have I seen an example of a man being open and vulnerable in the same way that women are given the permission to. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, because we have these emotions and we want to express them. We want to be seen. But in this traditional Western idea of masculinity, that is shamed, shunned upon, told that it's not allowed to be there if you are to be accepted.
So let me ask you this then, and you're not in a committed relationship at this time. You're out and about. You're volleying. You're playing a little game here and there. You're dating. You're exchanging. How do you find it for yourself in your own personal life, showing up as a man? Are you what does that look like for you? How do you show up with the balance of both the masculine and divine energy in your role, in your gender role as a man?
Mm-hmm.
And how is it impacting the relationships around intimacy today?
It's a great question. Yeah, I noticed there's some level of fear about being vulnerable with a woman, whether or not that can be held. But I think ultimately what I've found in terms of being able to provide a safe space for the feminine energy in women is being able to provide that safe space for the feminine energy in myself, showing up for myself and holding that container for me to express that. With women, I've actually found when a woman takes on a masculine role, more of a traditional masculine role, it helps me to feel safer because I don't feel like I have to show up in a way where I can't express. And I know that that isn't inherently true. So this is something I'm still sitting with, and a reflection I've been getting a lot recently around connecting with women is, how can I hold the masculine in myself to, well, be the masculine in myself to hold the feminine in myself, so I can then hold it for them, and then also giving them the permission to step into more of a masculine role and hold that for me, because we both need that.
So what I'm hearing is it's kind of like the yin and the yang,
Yes.
and it sounds to me like you're still kind of experimenting. You're playing a little bit with finding that what I call that sweet spot,
Yes.
so that you can nurture and nourish a healthy relationship, let's say with a woman on the other side of the table.
Yes.
What do you make of that, Evis? Love?
I hear one big word that drops for me, and that's balance. It just sounds like a balance of both these masculine and feminine energies. But, obviously before we can get an opportunity to do that, we do have to reconcile what's been happening on the planet. I'm going to speak again from traditional terms, and, we had men's business, we had women's business. But one beautiful thing within men's business was that we had yarning circles where we could express ourselves emotionally. And I think what you're talking about there, Kai, is being able to be vulnerable with that feminine or beloved, for her to open and be open to receive your emotions. Being able to balance both of these energies is going to take a lot of healing, like you said before, Mr. Off the Man. But as a man, really noting and being aware of what some of those energies are for ourselves, so important to start with. Are we independent within our life? Do we show strength and courage and resilience to overcome obstacles, challenges within our lives? Are we assertive with our decision making? Are we a leader in our own life before we can lead another? Some of these things are a lot of values that I really try to align to within my own life. And whether that attracts that feminine energy, it just really comes down to the individual, doesn't it? So being able to express those within yourself allows you to build this strong self-image for self, where you will go ahead and you will attract that right one in your life, where you can be open and show your vulnerability to someone. So yeah, man, we've got a lot of healing till we come to that part still. And I think, what we're discussing here tonight is all part of that.
All right. So I'm going to put you in a hot seat.
Burn it up, brother.
Physically, you have a very strong masculine energy about you. If you looked at, if anyone caught the opening clip from last week's episode, I think we saw you with I don't know how many packs you got on you. 8, 10, 12. I've lost track. I can't even count them anymore. But you clearly have a very physically fit body specimen. Where are you at in your own journey of how to balance the physical masculine strength that you express through your physical outside of your body, with tapping into the emotional feminine divine energy? Is it a struggle for you? Is it something that it's a work in progress? Where are you at with it in your own personal life of dating and cultivating healthier relationships?
You know what, brother? I'm at a place in my life where I can honestly say I'm at peace with it. It's been a lifetime, but I'm at peace in being able to balance those energies. And that shows from the physical body that you're talking about. But I had to learn to go within. The initial foundation of building that was obviously the external. But by me practicing the more internal and being able to be vulnerable with my emotions, freely to express them, being able to envision, being able to imagine, being intuitive, being imaginative, which I mentioned, showing insight, all of those inner things I still do, and I balance through my meditation, through my mindfulness practices, through my breath work. But then it's no obviously secret that I'm also practicing the physical by going to a gym or getting out on country and challenging the masculine energy. And from what I see out in the collective with many of our brothers, there is not, without being judgmental, that physical component. It's something that has been a program, an agenda. I'm going to say it. There is an agenda running right now that is emasculating many of our men in society. You've only got to look at what we're going through as a society. The world's out of balance. We've got cases of crazy stabbings currently happening here in the land down under. Men just walking past. Back in the day, this would not have happened, or there would have been men that joined each other as brothers to stop some of the stuff that we're starting to see. So, yeah, my brother, it's all about balance, but having peace within yourself.
What do you think is at the root of emasculating men right now? What's happening?
It's control. It's the only way that you can control a society. And it's not happening overnight. This has obviously been from a very long time ago. You know, I always teach this in my workshop, at the very cornerstone in traditional societies, we had warriors that guarded our women. We had warriors that guarded our elders, our children. And in the center of all of that was society and communal values. So this hasn't happened overnight, man. This has been generational.
Got it. We got a question for you. It's coming in from one of our founding brothers from Real Men Real Talk Live, Charles Maddox, coming in from somewhere either in Costa Rica or South Florida this evening. He says, is Evis dating, or as Evis is dating, has he seen traditional values in his side of the world? Or are we losing it? Because he also said right before that, as a man, meeting a woman that has traditional values is very rare. Women have become, in many ways, worse than men at times. So men have changed roles in many ways. What do you make of that?
I want him to define traditional values. I just want to hear your definition, brother, first, of what you're saying about women's traditional values. I'd be interested.
All right. And while he's pausing or pondering that new challenge you're now giving to him, Kamala, what are you making of what this segment we're chatting about here? What does this mean for you?
So fascinating, man. Yeah, I mean, I think something that I've encountered a lot in my life is as there is a societal vision or idea of men and the role that we play, like was mentioned in that comment, women are kind of rejecting that. I think men are rejecting that too. But I heard a lot growing up about sexism that exists in the workplace, in this patriarchal system. And the idea behind it that I always got was that the world serves this traditional idea of a man, and it does not at all serve the women. And what I've come to find is I don't think that idea about masculine or feminine roles really serves anybody. But it took a lot of internal work to realize what my masculinity means to me, because growing up, I always heard that just by inherently being, especially a white man, that I am inherently the problem. And I think a lot of men, kind of to cater to this, this pendulum swing in the other direction where, you know, the feminist movement is picking up. I'm saying most women I encounter consider themselves feminists, and that battle, so to say, is still being fought. And in many ways, I felt I've been seen as the enemy just by inherently being a man. And so I've seen a lot of men in my generation kind of suppress in some ways who they are in order to not appear to be the epitome of all evil in society, which, as I've said, is perhaps an agenda that men are inherently the issue.
Got it. And Charles responds to you right here. Well, Ev, he says, I would say allowing a man to maintain a space of being that head as we have been taught. That's what he's referring to as traditional values.
And I've said it in the show. If you missed it before, my brother, I'm going to say it again. A woman in that sense that you're defining within that traditional value to be more passive and receptive will go into that position for her masculine energy to lead her within her life only if she feels those 3 S's: safe, secure, stable. She will then naturally flow in that divine feminine nature as the empress on her throne to allow her not have to go into that masculine energy and constantly be imbalanced. And that's all there is. We have to show that safety, that security, and that stability as men initially and firstly within our own lives.
Beautiful.
I have a question for Ev based on that. Do you believe that a woman can come into more of that masculine presence for a man who is perhaps more in a feminine state, or is it kind of fixated to the physicality of sex?
100%, yeah. And she will only slide into that energy naturally in that connection if there is a void within that particular balance. So like you mentioned at the start, we naturally come into this world, we may have more feminine qualities as a man, but that then becomes the journey. And that's when she unconsciously, subconsciously, or consciously then will challenge her beloved masculine to lead with love versus leading with power like the old way. I hope that makes sense, brother.
Well, I'm not sure it does. I'm a little confused here. Can you share that from a different perspective? What does that mean?
Naturally, okay, we may have more feminine energy as we come into this obviously world. Now, if you are single, it will be part of your journey, and it will naturally, you'll see through your actions, behaviors, and choices that you make, balance itself out. Now, whether it does on this journey or in another lifetime, that's another show altogether again. But if you are in a connection with a beloved, and mind you, we talked about this last week, as long as it is not an attached, codependent-based relationship. I've got to make that clear, because if it has become an attached, codependent relationship, that's when you're trying to heal each other, remember. But if you have detached from that energy and that you're actually aware, you've done your own work, you've been able to work through certain things that you had to heal, whether it was from previous relationships or your own healing and your own introspection, you've been able to both do that work. Then that's what I talk about in the new world as we will come into the partnerships. You've done your own work then, brothers and sisters. You don't have to compete anymore. See, we never competed in our culture. There was no such thing. This whole idea of competing against other, look, I've seen it in my personal relationships. I've seen it in other relationships. There's this unconscious competitive nature still between the two, obviously masculine and feminine energy. there is no such thing as competition when you've been completed, my brothers and sisters. So what I'm trying to say here again, Jay, is that it's just going to balance itself out eventually, as long as it's not based on trying to heal with each other.
Got
Hope
it.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I wanna just share for a moment here that in the work I do today with men and women individually, and as with couples as well, what I see a common thread with so many women that pass through to do the work, the deep healing work, and in the retreat work that I do here in Sedona, is that they feel a sense of disconnection from their husbands or partners, meaning they want their husbands, their beloveds, to be open, to show, to express their sadness, to express their emotions, their feelings when they're feeling them, the healthy ones and the unhealthy ones, what they're feeling inside. And so many men are just concerned or afraid because then they're afraid to be judged. And it's so interesting because how I show up for the clients is I show up with a very, very heavy feminine um, consciousness in my work I do, meaning my role is to show up and create the safe space for them to let their own guard down, to feel safe, to release the pain that they've been carrying as females. And what I have found is that the greatest impact that I have in the work I do is by showing up, leaning more into that conscious state of connection, vulnerability, love, owning my truth, speaking my truth. And by doing so, they open up. They feel so safe. And the tears begin to flow. The interesting thing is, I take that same approach with the men that I get the bookings for. And for many men, the tears will flow as well. So I know it's possible that we can access that. However, what we're lacking is that safe space to where we feel that we're not going to be judged, we're not going to be looked down upon, to finally just be our authentic self. And I think that's where we have the greatest opportunity for growth and healing in our relationships and our gender and our agenda roles. Is that when we are able to truly be our authentic self and express our feelings, our emotions, our needs, our desires without fear of being judged, we can experience the true essence of connection without attachment. And it's interesting, I also worked very recently with a woman who spent her whole career in corporate America, and she worked for one of the top high tech companies in the world. And the reason she was attracted to that very large organization, I'm not going to name the name, is because they promoted and marketed uh, equal respect for men and women. And she was attracted to that because prior companies she had worked for in the high tech industry, there was a lot of sexism. And so she accepted the position. And what she found was, even though leadership is promoting this equal respect, honoring one another as men and women in the work that she does, she didn't find a safe environment to work in. Sexism was very prevalent, even in that organization. So I share this because I think that there's hope. The fact that an organization is seeking that balance, even in corporate, let's say corporate America, in the corporate world, we have a long way to go, because at the end of the day, what the truth is that we still are showing up as the employees with all of our programming from home that we received, especially as boys, that then shows up in the workplace today. Have you experienced any of that, Kamalu, in your own life yet, as far as sexism? And have you witnessed it? Have you heard it? Have you seen it? And how have you avoided it, as far as pushing back on when you hear someone speaking in a sexist way, or have you let it go?
It's a fascinating question, man. Um, hmm. Honestly, up to this point in my life, I can't say I've had a whole lot of traditional jobs. um, in terms of the workplace itself, uh, not not a lot that I've seen personally or that I've encountered. Um, in my experience growing up in the island, there seems to be more fluidity with it. Like I came into more feminine roles, like as a housekeeper for a period of time, um, feminine roles, and that was normal. You know, I had female bosses and I've had male bosses, and I haven't necessarily noticed a whole lot within my experience other than the stories that I've heard from women. But my mom growing up was the breadwinner of my family, and my dad was the stay-at-home parent. And in my mom talking about her career being a scientist in marine biology in a very male-dominated industry, she told me a lot of stories about sitting at the table and opinion feeling less valid in some way, shape, or form. Um, but I think a lot of that has changed and is still changing. And I'm not going to say that things are perfect in any way, shape, or form, but I definitely think things are moving in a more inclusive and equal direction, at least on the business front.
Been your experience, Have?
Oh, look, brother, I've seen it, man. I've been in, I'm not going to mention names, but I've been in certain clothing stores where, as a manager, I was advised by the higher up, so to speak, to make sure that I had more girls on the floor than guys, because they were attracting more men in to buy, obviously, the men's clothing. So that's a big experience of sexism for me.
Hmm.
I mean, that's well and truly right in your face. But, that's obviously what has happened in modern society. And this falls under the umbrella of making the KPIs for the Western style of leadership. This wasn't our old ways, mate. We had collaborative leadership. Our world wasn't based on KPIs and trying to get ahead of the next store or the next brother or sister beside you. It was actually how you were able to embrace your talents, gifts, and capabilities, and how your personal identity, created that balance within a social ecosystem and community itself, by not trying to get ahead of the other brother or sister, because you were all working together as one. So we have got a long way to go. I'm not saying that we can go back to every single one of those old ways, but it was the values that I always talk about that allow us to actually start embracing a more communal bond on how we not only interact, but how we associate ourselves within an ecosystem in society.
Beautiful. Ev, as we're approaching just a few minutes to the end of tonight's episode, number 180, I want to ask you, since you picked this topic, this was one that you were passionate about diving into tonight. Is there anything that we've missed upon that you want to dive into right now?
Yeah, there is actually. I'll bring it to the surface. Could be another show altogether. But I did touch on it a little bit earlier, and what's really creeping up, my brothers and sisters, and it's really become prominent within my observation in the collective. And that's this whole idea and obviously presence of technology that we're currently in. Now, there is a little bit of a thread out there that talks about the possibility of a transhuman agenda. What does that mean? Would you know what that meant, Kai? Would you know what that meant, Jay?
Oh, humans merging more and more with technology, the boundaries between organic and inorganic getting thinner and thinner.
Jay?
I'll go with Kai's answer.
Love it, love it. But yeah, I love that, Kai. And, you know, a lot of the stuff, you know, one of the obvious businesses that I work within is actually a lot of technology. And this whole presence of AI that's actually upon us, brothers and sisters, is a little bit more prominent than you can actually understand. Some people might be into it, some people might be not. But the whole idea wrapped around this is life extension. Yeah, life extension. You got people out here starting to think they want to be immortal. You know, some of these people that were talking about this back 40, 50 years ago, currently frozen, they're actually thinking about bringing themselves back in the year 2030. It's only 5 years down the track, my brothers and sisters. What really worries me in the collective is that where are our young people? Where are our future generations? They're on here. They're on the technology. You're starting to process what I'm talking about. You see, we're going to start to see a whole generation start to identify themselves as digital. We already have people online filtering themselves, implanting themselves, you name it. This is all happening right in front of your eyes. We're going to have a generation that does not know what they are, my brothers and sisters. They'll be identifying themselves as half this, half that, droid this, droid that, digital this, digital that, data this, data that. So what Jay said at the start is really important to really understand tonight. What is this whole idea about trying to confuse us as a collective? It's designed to separate us. It's designed to divide us. On this planet right now, we have a very fine line between these two worlds. We have an opportunity to come together and be that one, be able to unite, and possibly go back to some of those old ways and those old values to bring into the new world. Or we have an opportunity to start labeling ourselves as whatever we want, divide ourselves, keep separating ourselves. Where does that go? Well, I only know, brothers and sisters. So on that note, my Mr. Offen, that's all I've got to say about that.
Well, here's what I got to say about that. It scares the daylights out of me because it's just bringing us that much more detached from our own emotions, from our own truth. I'm not okay with that. But how much control do I have over that? What I have control over is how I show up. And I do my part to show up as my authentic self, at peace with who I am today. I want to pull this up on the screen here. Charles Maddox challenged all three of us. We'll close out with an answer for Mr. Maddox here. He said he would love to hear how each one of you, the three of us, have made or allowed your personal relationships to thrive. Speaking from experience is very powerful. What holds your dynamics together, Kamalu?
Ooh. how I have allowed my personal relationships to thrive. It goes back to what you were just speaking on, Jay, of being able to be my authentic self and know my truth and live it. The more I allow myself to do so, the more discernment I have about the people who are and are not supposed to be in my life. And the roles that we come together in aren't forced. They're not based on programming. It's just a balance. Like Evis was saying, it's a balance of what I'm bringing to the table and what you're bringing to the table. And if our energies resonate on that level, then you're a person who I have in my life, who I explore a relationship with. And if not, that's okay.
Beautiful. Ev, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, love that, Kai. Love it, brother. And it's the same thing for me, man. What's allowed my personal relationships in the current and present moment to really thrive within my life is, like you mentioned, it's that relationship with self. Now, for far too long, man, I lost myself in relationships. I lost myself. And to be able to walk back home and accept myself for who I was, how I was trying to personally express myself, not only within relationships, but also individually, and not worry whether I was accepted by an external presence or not, allowed me to bring myself home to one thing, my brother. That was self-love. The greatest gift we can give to ourselves down here, brothers and sisters. Self-love will allow your relationships to thrive.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What I'm feeling is I want to bring in one of our clips from last week's episode, which is kind of flowed into this week around. Last week's episode was all about owning a truth. And we kind of played with that a little bit tonight as well. Kamala, what are you thinking? Who should we go with? Whose clip? Your clip?
Sure. Why not?
For me, owning my truths is speaking from my own experience, speaking from my own heart, and not just the question I ask myself is, am I giving the right answer or the real answer? And I think, especially within the spiritual community, there's this idea of, light and love. And it's all positive. Everything needs to be shifted to a positive. And the truth of the matter is, we still feel darkness sometimes. And that's okay. So, speaking my truth for me, the thing that I always come back to is, am I speaking from my mind? Am I speaking from my heart?
Yeah, brother.
And on that note, viewers, if you heard something that you like to love, want to invite you to share it out with your friends and family. By sharing it out, perhaps one person's life will be touched in a healthy way, in a positive way. You never know who's ready to hear, who's ready to receive, who's ready to surrender. And on that note, viewers, we appreciate you. We love you. We thank you for joining us on another episode of Real Men. Real Talk. Live.